How's it going, everyone? We're going to take a look at a Pokemon scale world set of figures of Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres. This is a Japan-only product. Before we crack on, I have to be transparent. I do work for the Pokemon Company International, and all opinions in this video are my own. I also bought these figures myself for my own pleasure because I collect figures, if you couldn't tell from my channel already. So I bought these and paid for these and imported these all on my own dime. Let's crack on. Most Bandai web exclusive, if you've seen like the SH Figure Art stuff, then you know it comes in a sort of a brown shipper box like this. Has the Pocket Monsters logo there, scale word, and then in Japanese what this one is. So this is actually Pokemon for, who is it, Kanto region legendaries. So this is going to be Articuno, Zapdos, and Freezer. So it's going to be Freezer, Thunder, and Fire. Fire, that's it, how it says in katakana. So pretty simple brown shipper box, but in case you do want to get a copy of this yourself, then you may want to be aware that there is a brown shipper box included. So this is the actual package for this scale word, quite similar to a lot of the previous scale word stuff. We've got the updated Bandai Namco logo in the top right, scale word logo in the top left, and then a picture with some nice kind of visual effects artwork going on around there as well. So flame effect around Moltres, lightning effect around Zapdos, and Articuno, a little bit of ice sort of effect with nice water down there. So Freezer and Thunder and Fire. Katakana at the top as well. Fairly simple background. So it's actually kind of similar in sort of that theme or key visual that the Johto legendaries had, if you recall those, which I have done an unboxing for as well. And then we've got the top side here with slightly different sort of arrangement. Pictures of the figures again. Most of the poses of the scale world figures are mostly in the regular kind of pose that you might see in key art and things like that. Not all of them these days. I think some Kanto region stuff that is releasing this year or in the last year is actually using slightly different poses now. So this actually came out end of last year. I've just been lazy to actually open it. The back is showing some of the scale world stuff that's come out previously as well. So I've covered some of the stuff here. For example, the Kanto region, some of the Galar region as well. Corviknight was quite cool. I do have Arceus or Arceus as well. I do have that one, but I just haven't got around to it. Luxray, I'm pretty sure I did buy Luxray. I need to double check now. I always forget kind of what I've ordered because I've just got so many figures coming in. But there are a lot of cool Pokemon, and a lot of Pokemon have been covered across different kind of generations now. So you should be able to find the most popular ones, at least. You should be able to find them all the way back to Kanto region. Though I will say web exclusives like this, for example, do sometimes sell out, so they can be a little bit hard to track down afterwards. Some of them aren't web exclusives, like usually like say Charmeleon and whatnot, they come in like bigger sets and you can usually get those pretty easily. But things like Charizard, Venusaur, Blastoise, and some others as well across different generations are web exclusive, so it is a little bit more tricky to get. But yeah, this is just a real good look at what's kind of come before. So yeah, a lot of Pokemon. So yeah, that's really impressive to see that how many Pokemon have been covered. Also, not just Pokemon, you've got some trainer characters have also been covered as well. They don't show any of the red, blue in the actual Kanto one, but yeah, you can see some of the covered ones that have been covered before. But that's the back of the package. On the right side, you got a little bit of information on how to actually display the other three. So this is just kind of showing you the scale with like the Venusaur in their hand, which is quite big. Venusaur definitely is one of the bigger ones. So, and at the bottom, you've just got some information in Japanese. That's the package. I spoke a lot about the package, but let's get on to opening and seeing what's inside the box. So here we have the 3 legendary bird trio from the Kanto region on display. They're quite easy to set up, but I'll talk you through it one by one. So just kind of looking at them, they are quite similar to a lot of these scale world stuff that came before, including, well, the Charizard, Venusaur, Blastoise, Groudon, and Kyogre that I did as well. I think that's probably the most recent one that I've checked out. But there have been loads of Pokemon in the scale world series so far, but I haven't been able to check out every single one of them. But yeah, this is cool that we get all 3 in a single pack, just like the Johto legendaries as well. So this is very, very cool to see. But we'll talk through it one by one, and then yeah, I'll just kind of sum it up, I guess, after that. Now it is pretty straightforward to set them up, but the actual thing to keep note of though is also very easy to keep note of, is the actual stand that goes into the base is slightly different for each of these 3 Pokemon. So the seat that Articuno sits on is quite kind of basic. It is basically just a very, very regular seat. I'll take Articuno off just to kind of show you there. Very kind of regular looking seat, looking sculpt, I guess, for that bit. The one for Zapdos is slightly different, and then the one again for Moltres is going to be slightly different because it has a little extra bit to kind of support the base of the tail. Speaking of the support of the base of the tail, you can see this little bit here is also included in the box, and this is going to help to support Articuno's tail, because you can see the wisp of the tail kind of goes like that and curves around, and this little bit here just basically supports that curved bit at the end, as you saw earlier on. So again, very easy to kind of set up. So that's quite straightforward. Now, having a look at the Pokemon, again, it is quite similar to a lot of the Scale World stuff that's come before it. These aren't going to be the same kind of caliber in terms of paint or sculpt that you would probably see in, say, the Kotobukiya stuff, the character trainer figures. Those are like super amazing stuff, and I love that series. So this is quite different. And this is much more of a Gashapon kind of trading figure sort of quality. So not the best quality, but they're still serviceable, especially like from a distance. And you've got a lot of these Pokemon, they're going to look great either way. So like, good thing that these come in at a trio, right? So Articuno colors are all on point here. You got the light blue of the most of the kind of body. The belly is in kind of a whitish blue, smoky white, let's call it that. And then you got the face and the kind of crown bit. I forgot the actual technical term of these little 3 bits here, but they are in a slightly different shade of blue. The eyes are a little bit kind of cross-eyed, I think, on mine. It's not really noticeable just kind of looking at it, but just kind of looking at it with the camera, it maybe is a little bit. I'm not 100% sure, but otherwise it doesn't look too bad from a distance. There is no shading on any of these figures, by the way. They do keep them pretty plain, so there's no kind of detailed shading or wash on any of these Scale World stuff, so we kind of know what to expect with that. The tail is also going to be in that kind of more royal-ish blue sort of color that the crown has at the top, and you got the wings too. The wings are kind of cut, so you see the feathers that are unique to Articuno's wings, so the kind of flat edge you can see there, and they kind of widen as it gets to the top bit there. So it's really kind of nice curvature, nice sculpt with the wings overall. Generally, the sculpt is quite good. As I mentioned though earlier on, most of the kind of poses of Scale World figures, they use a regular pose that you might see in the Pokedex. That's kind of changing with some of the recent updates or releases of, say, version 2s of some of the Pokemon that they've done. For example, Charmander has a version 2 slightly different pose that it did when it first came out. So maybe they'll do that with the legendaries, or who knows. But yeah, sculpt wise, this is looking pretty solid. By the way, let's just kind of see its feet there. You can see the bend there, and then the claws there with white painted nails. So all of them are quite similar to white painted nails there. But yeah, pretty straightforward stuff there. I'm going to place Articuno back on the base. Actually, no, before I do that, I'm going to put Articuno there and just quickly show you that base again. It does topple over. You do need the base for sure. This just kind of plugs in like so in this T base here. See that T position? There, you just kind of get that base for each of them and just plug it in, and that's really all you got to do. And then sit the actual Pokemon on top of it. Now it's going to vary slightly different. So Articuno, you've got that additional bit that I mentioned for the tail support, so you can just add it on like that, and that's Articuno supported. Pretty easy. To wrap up with Articuno, let's quickly talk about the assembly. So when you do get this out of the box, it's only going to be the body, and you have to attach the wings and the tail. So I'm going to take the wing off just here on one side. You can see that's what it's going to look like without one wing. Now it's pretty straightforward to actually attach them, but one thing I do always say about these Scale World stuff is a lot of the seams and the joints, you do notice those kind of a fair bit. That's mostly going to be an up close thing. The tail is actually pretty good, you can't really notice that, but that does actually slot in pretty easily. It's one way only, so the joint's kind of sculpted in a way that it only goes in one way. That's what it's going to look like without the tail, and just slot that back in. So it is quite straightforward. My sockets were a little bit tight, so warm them up, give them some time to kind of warm, maybe 10 seconds with like warm water or something, and it should kind of slot in pretty comfortably and pretty easily. Let's move on to Zapdos then. So Zapdos is even more straightforward. So there's no wings to actually attach to this guy, and it's actually going to be only its beak. So I'm going to remove Zapdos from its base. Here's a quick look at Zapdos' base. You can see the angle of its seat is slightly different from what we saw with Articuno. Now this is Zapdos, which is looking very spiky and very electrifying. The actual points on the tips of the wings and the actual like crown of the actual head is not bad. It's not spiky or pointy at all, so you shouldn't hurt your fingers here. Unlike Articuno, the wings are all kind of pre-attached. It's just the beak. So I'm going to take the beak off right now. That's what it looks like without the beak, which is kind of freaky. You do have to just attach that once you get it out of the box. It's the only thing that you need to do with Zapdos. And here's a close look at its face. His eyes are much more simple compared to Articuno's eyes. And generally, it is a bit more of a simple kind of look, I think. Just kind of, it might look a little bit more chaotic because of the spikes. That's just kind of the way that Zapdos looks like. And then you got that long beak there. Have a close look at the beak there. You can kind of see underneath as well. And you got the nostrils up top there. Then we kind of come down to the legs and feet. So just like the Articuno, the talons are painted white there, you can see. But otherwise, he's got orange feet instead of the grey feet that Zapdos had. Articuno had, sorry. And then his underside of the body, a bit more of a closer view. Now, interestingly, I think like with Zapdos is we know that it's got black parts to its wings, but it's always kind of, well, I've always found it hard to kind of identify or like visualize it properly in the 2D artwork, but having this 3D model just kind of shows it a lot more clearer for me anyway. So here's the actual tail part, let's call it the tail part. So the black bits there inside the actual yellow outer part, and then same with the black portion of the wings as well. You've got these kind of ridges here, so I don't actually know if that's because of the figure or if that's how it normally is, because I've never really seen or never really paid attention to the back side of Zapdos. But it's a pretty cool looking figure overall. It is quite easy to actually get it back onto the base, and there's not really anything else to worry about. You don't need to support its tail or anything. Zapdos is probably the easiest one, and less one that I would worry too much about when putting it onto the base. And that's what Zapdos is going to look like. So generally he looks pretty good, or it looks pretty good. But let's get this onto the side, and then we'll finish off with Moltres. This is Moltres finishing off the legendary Kanto bird trio. Moltres has a much wider wingspan than Articuno and Zapdos. It spans around 21-22 centimeters for this particular figure. So it is quite big. You are going to need a fair amount of space for just Moltres, and obviously more if you're going to use Articuno and Zapdos as well. I'd ideally have all three on display. I think it just makes much more sense. So I'm going to take Moltres off the actual base because it is a little bit annoying. The tails come off, but we'll put that back in. So Moltres' base is definitely one that I think could have been done a bit better. So basically Moltres is the least stable on its base. So you can see here the actual seat is kind of similar to the other two, but you've got this extra bit here to support the flame tail part. It doesn't support it entirely well, so when you do move it, just be careful. Go super careful, or in fact just make sure you know where you're going to pose it, because it will probably topple over. Unlike the other two, it's prone to toppling over a little bit more, for me at least anyway. But this is a closer look at Moltres, or the Firebird, and you know, everyone has their own opinions about Moltres. Yeah, it looks like a flaming chicken, right? Or flaming bird. But this is the profile view of Moltres. Moltres also has pretty simple eyes compared to even the Articuno. Definitely Zapdos has the most simple eyes, but this is Moltres' eyes here, the beak there as well. Actually, for Moltres, you don't need to attach the beak, by the way. It's just the wings that you need to attach, just like Articuno, and then the tail as well. So you got the flame head there, the flame part here. Some parts of the actual wing and the head are a bit more translucent. So you say the wing part here, where I'm pointing, that's got some translucency to it. And then other parts like here, the actual orange, is just a solid paint job. So a little bit similar to, say, Charizard, which I'll pull out in just a second. So it's not all translucent, which I would have preferred. But you've also got to attach the wings, as I mentioned, just like with Articuno. You've got to do the same thing with Moltres. But Moltres, I feel there's much more gaps noticeable when you do attach the wings. So I've tried my best to attach it. The tails are going to leave at the side. So you will see some gaps here and there. So you can see a bit more gap from the top. It shouldn't be too bad. Again, once you've got it on display, you're probably not going to notice it that much. We come down to the actual feet again as well. So you got slightly more reddish looking feet compared to Zapdos. But again, it ends with the white talons over there. This is underside. Looks like I'm joking Zapdos, Moltres. I'm not, but there, that's the underside. The tail, just like the Articuno one, only fits in one way. Moltres' tail goes in this way, so the actual painted bit points to the left side, and the translucent flame bit points to the right side there. So that's Moltres with its tail attached. I'm going to spin this around, just kind of give you a full view of it. Like I said, the wingspan of Moltres is much bigger than the other two. But this Moltres, now generally for me, out of the three legendary Kanto birds, I found Moltres to be more of the simple type of looking Pokemon. I still think it looks pretty good. Simple doesn't always mean bad, but I just think, out of those three specifically, it is definitely the more simple looking one. I do really like the Galarian Moltres, by the way. That's really like hot looking, gotta say. Now this is all three again coming together as a group. Let me quickly bring out the Charizard, which I've kind of always had off to the side. So here's the scale world of Charizard sitting here to the left. I've had this since the beginning, so you can see Charizard is a little bit smaller than the others. He's probably in between Zapdos and Articuno. I mean, wingspan is definitely much larger than for Moltres. The wingspan of Moltres is definitely much bigger. But you can see they kind of scale up pretty well. Remember, this whole Scale World series is keeping the scale consistent among all of the Pokemon. So it's been a bit confusing for some Pokemon fans. Some fans have kind of seen like some Pokemon smaller scale than they anticipate. For me, at least, I thought Rayquaza, for example, was going to be quite massive, but it actually wasn't. It just kind of is a bit surprising. But this is how they all look. Let me bring Charizard back again. He's off to the side. But yeah, this is the Kanto Legendary Birds, which I think is pretty good overall. As I said, though, they aren't going to be the standards that you might see from Kotobukiya figures. Those have a very next level standards. So for me, get what you like from this series, because now there are a lot of different Pokemon characters covered for the Scale World stuff. So just kind of focus on what you like. I still think Groudon was one of the most amazing ones personally. I really like the Groudon one. That was a really great looking scale and very hefty figure as well. These guys don't weigh too much. They do take up a bit of space, as I mentioned, because of their wingspan. Collectively, their wingspan is going to be quite big. You can kind of squash them in, by the way, a little bit more if you want, before they start clashing and colliding beaks and stuff. But they do take up quite a bit of space for sure. So make sure you can accommodate them before you even think about picking them up. As I mentioned, these are only available in Japan, so I did have to import mine. I got mine from nin-nin game, I think it was, and I cannot remember the price, to be honest. But usually with Bandai web exclusive Scale World stuff, they tend to sell out and therefore end up being a little bit expensive only a few months after the release of them. Overall, these aren't bad figures, but they are a little bit expensive, especially because I'm importing them. But I'd really love to see Kotobukiya try these legendary birds out in one of their figure lines. That would be something I'd love to see. But yeah, that's the legendary 3 Kanto birds of Articuno, Zapdos, and Moltres from the Pokemon Scale World line of figures. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.